The National Assembly of Nigeria is the democratically elected body representing the interest of Nigeria and its people. They make the laws for Nigeria and hold the government accountable. The Senate, with 109 members corresponding to the 109 senatorial district, evenly distributed among the 36 states, and the House of Representatives, with 360 members representing the 360 federal constituencies of the country. On Tuesday, November 9th, the Nigerian Senate at plenary passed a bill amending the 2010 Electoral Act. A significant feature of the repackaged bill is the inclusion of the much-desired electronic transmission of results and preference for direct primaries as mode of selecting representatives for political parties. During the 30 days of anxiety in the country on whether the president should assent to the bill or not, at last, Buhari declared his decision in a letter to the National Assembly, where he cited several reasons for declining assent to the Electoral Act amendment.
I had mixed feelings when I heard the president spoke about the bill yesterday. Mixed feelings because if I think about that important piece of legislation and what it will do to our electoral democracy and why we keep stalling on getting it passed into law, it breaks my heart. The reason that the concerns that the president raised are germane, especially because if you think about the pillars of democracy, you're looking at the pillars of inclusiveness and also participation. And if you want the process to be inclusive, you want to allow the process that allows the emergence of candidates or candidates for election to be flexible enough for people to get to decide who becomes their leader. But over and beyond that, we have also seen the president sign some bills into law with issues that are even bigger than what he had raised in the Electoral Bill. For instance, the president recently just signed the budget into law. He raised concerns about the budget and went ahead to sign the budget. The president as well, if we recall, signed the Petroleum Industry Bill into law. That also came with some amendments by the president. I anticipated that that will happen, given also his history of not signing other electoral amendment bills. This will make it the fifth electoral amendment bill that the president had refused to sign. The last one he declined assent was in 2018, where he raised certain concerns about the timing of the bill, and also some concerns also about the drafting errors that he had observed in the bill. So far, the only concern the president had raised is about the party primaries. We hope that it stays there, because some of the concerns he had raised based on the last bill that he refused assent, we observed them also in this bill. For instance, even some of the drafting errors, Young Africa identified about 11 of those, both grammatical errors, repetitions in the bill and all of that, which we highlighted. And we had also put that in a memo which we have submitted to the National Assembly since the 29th of December. We hope they will also act on that so that the process will not be delayed any further.
My worry is, how come the Office of Attorney General did not spot those cross-referencing gaps and drafting errors? How come INEC did not spot those errors when they were responding to the President's communication on the bill? How come only issue of direct primary dominated the airspace? And even the President's letter did not contain anything about cross-referencing error and drafting, cross-referencing errors, drafting errors and cross-referencing gaps. So I said, is there more to this? So if the civil society organizations did not get to see and read and work on the bill, we will have been led by the nose, believing that, all we have to do is just reinstate Section 87 of the external law, which talks about direct and indirect primary, and throw it back at the president. And the president will throw it back and say, there are drafting errors, clerical errors, and cross-referencing gaps. So please go work on it. And we know we are barely a year to the next election. So I'm having a feeling of deja vu. Aside that, I've asked myself, could this seems like a conspiracy theory. Could this be deliberately orchestrated by some elements within the National Assembly, working in cahoots with the presidency and the leadership of APC to deliberately frustrate electoral reform? You know what gave birth to this school of thought? As of July, when this bill was first passed, all we were hearing was issue of transmission of election results, which the Senate said INEC should go and get approval from Nigeria Communication Commission and final approval from National Assembly, which we all kicked against. So possibly when they saw the public pressure mounted, they retreated, recommitted the bill, and passed same as was the position of House of Reps. And then decided to introduce this controversial clause on direct primaries. Because I can't put anything beyond the politicians. Otherwise, nobody had anything about it. In fact, the technical committee that worked on this bill, comprising of INEC, Office of Attorney General, and National Assembly Judge Committee on Electoral Reform, nobody at that level, where they submitted their report in April of 2021, nobody talked about the issue of amendment of Section 87. How come all of a sudden we are now hearing direct primary alone? The British will tell you if nothing is broken, you don't fix it. So whose interest? We've done something for 22 years, going to 23 years. Direct and indirect primary has been the options. So why would anybody wake up one morning and say, we only want to do direct primaries? Whose interest is being protected?
The president, in his response, raised some issues which we may consider, we can say, are germane. He raised concerns with the legality of restricting political parties to just one method of nominating candidates. He raised issues bordering on security. He raised issues bordering on democracy itself. He raised issues bordering on the financial burden this may bring upon political parties and candidates or aspirants. And so if you look at the issues he raised, you can say the president was right in saying that political parties in a democratic setting shouldn't be restricted, because democracy is all about choice. Give the people the opportunity to make decisions the way they want to make decisions, so long as this is the collective decision of the people, not coerced, not forced to make such decisions. And so when you look at those reasons, you may want to say that the president was right. But then again, we can say that for the president to have delayed, conveying his reasons to the legislature, the reasons we have mentioned, the president delayed in conveying those reasons. In that regard, you may say the president, wasn't right in conveying his reasons to the legislature, because if he had conveyed his reasons to the legislature before they went on the Christmas and New Year holidays, I'm sure the legislature would have done the needful and reverted, to the president. And so in that regard, we can say the president didn't get it right, because this is a bill that has been in the works for the past 3 years, and so much resources, so much went into that. The people contributed. It was a popular bill, has some progressive provisions that would improve the electoral system and process in the country.
President Buhari's letter was read on Tuesday's plenary session at the Senate and the House of Representatives, where he noted his concerns on portions of the bill that needs to be changed before he can assent to the document.
I believe our National Assembly is matured enough to give us a flawless legislation. They have all the paraphernalia of office. They are at liberty to hire consultants. They have aides. They have Do you know how much the state spends to run a federal lawmaker? They have constituency office, which is populated by federal government, and they have their Abuja office. And they have the resources to also hire experts. Did you know that, according to the Punch of May 2021, it said that over 200 bills have been vetoed by Buhari in 6 years. 200 bills. So, if they are doing shoddy jobs, why? I mean, I talked about failure of deja vu earlier. If in 2018, this is how we found ourselves. February, they passed the bill, then they introduced a controversial clause 25, which talked about INEC should have election over a 3-day period, and that National Assembly election should hold first, followed by that of presidential, followed by governor and state house of assembly. And the president said, you cannot. This is a federal executive body. You cannot dictate how it should run its activity. INEC is an autonomous body.
If you think about other electoral stakeholders, beyond the political parties, you also have civil society organizations that needs this bill to plan. Plan in the sense of even conducting voter education. The last time the president raised concerns that it was too close to the election to sign the bill into law, especially if you think that some of those provisions, you need to take them to the voters. You need to educate the voters as to how to engage the electoral process. We thought this is a perfect opportunity to get that signed into law so that those concerns that he had raised in the past will be addressed now, and voter early planning can start, which will, in the long time, also improve on the conduct of those of the elections. Now, we have also seen this sort of this sort of whether nonchalant attitude in the past that the people concerned will be for dragging until very close to the election before you begin to hear other issues come up. We got barely 12 months on the 2023 election. We are in January, if you think that the election will be conducted in February of 2023. And so the National Assembly, based on when the bill was returned to them, it was returned on December 19th. You anticipate that within a 1-month window, they will resolve whatever are the concerns that the president raised so they can send the bill back to the president for assent. The president had made a profound statement in the interview he granted recently that he was going to sign the bill if those concerns are addressed. So now, the advocacy is to the National Assembly. Expunge those obnoxious issues that the president had raised concerns about and send it to the president so we can see whether the president will truly assent to the bill. I truly hope and expect that those are the only issues that the president those are the only concerns that the president have about the bill, not for us to go back and we begin to hear other issues prop up, which, I will not be surprised by the time those happen, because if you recall also in 2018, the back and forth happened for almost about 4 times until the final time in December when the president declined assent. So we are hoping not to see a repeat of 2018. We are hoping that as soon as this is cleaned and returned to the president, he will sign it into law.
The concern of the civil society in the country is that we should have this bill. We should conclude with everything about amending and amending the Electoral Act so that we can have a new electoral law, a new legal framework to conduct elections in the country, so that we can begin to test run this new legal framework. In fact, the idea had been that we should have deployed it in the conduct of the November election, the 2021 elections, governorship election in Anambra State, just so we can see how it affects the electoral system, so that we can also identify the gray areas, so that we can also identify areas that need to be improved. If there are areas that need legislative action, more legislative action, we can quickly do that. And also deploy it for the FCT area council elections coming up in February, just a few weeks away, as well as the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections and some other by-elections and off-cycle elections scheduled for this year. Now, that affords the nation, the country, the opportunity, to put it into practice, find out how good this new legal framework, is, and then identify areas that should be improved if there are. And so that has been the intention and desire of the civil society and indeed the electorate. But then the legislature equally, delayed in concluding works on the amendment of the Electoral Act, and therefore we find ourselves here where just slightly a few days, the general elections will be conducted on, the first round will be held on February 18th, 2023. And so just in about a year to the elections, we are still talking about, the legal framework. And so it brings some level of confusion into the system. Yeah, it is true that we have a subsisting electoral act, but then why there has been a general outcry for reforms of the electoral system is that we have put this, the 2010 Electoral Act into use, and we have seen that there are areas that need to be improved. And so that has been the concern of the civil society, organizations.
On the stance that the 469 lawmakers in the 9th National Assembly will take if the president fails to assent to the bill, the veto power of the National Assembly should be evoked. However, that section of the Constitution empowers them to override the president through a 2/3 majority vote.
There are 4 options available to National Assembly. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One is to override the president's veto. 2 is to remove provisions that has to do with party primaries from the bill altogether and leave it at the discretion of political parties. 3 is to do the needful and reinstate the provision of Section 87, which has given choice of direct and indirect primaries. 4th is to just abandon the project and say, look, we failed, so let's do it again in 2023. Those are the 4 options available. If you override the president's veto without working on the cross-referencing errors and gaps, you are going to have same of same. So you have a fait accompli law. Yes, it will have the force of law, but there will be too many litigations. Because what the civil society has pointed out is already in public domain. And what people will be looking out for is that when the gazetted copy is out, they will be looking for those errors, whether they are still there or not. And then the next thing, there will be deluge of cases in court asking that those 10 sections be struck out. So if you are striking out as many as 10 sections, it's as good as you don't have a law. So if whatever they want to do, even if they want to override the president's veto, it should not be in the way the bill is right now. And I feel overriding the president's veto would be like a slap on the face of the president, because it will then be that you are poised for war with the presidency. And the president may not take kindly to that, because don't forget, the leadership of Senate and House of Reps hold those positions at the behest of the strong support they receive from the president. So you don't bite the finger that fed you. And don't also forget the power of the president. They can also constrain their removal if that happens.
Within the ranks of the National Assembly, it is heavily fragmented, heavily divided. And so to some extent, I think I saw that unity of purpose more in the 8th Assembly than in the 9th Assembly. This is so much because I thought we had gone to a very advanced stage in the process of the electoral amendment, and so somehow the direct primary thing was smuggled almost at the last minute, which divided the House even further. One thing that also divided the House, if you recall, was the issue around electronic transmission. After we had crossed this hurdle, this also came up. So I haven't seen that unity of purpose on the part of the National Assembly to say they are going to veto the president. And so also that confirms what a lot of fears that a lot of people have raised about the National Assembly just yielding to the biddings of the president. If the National Assembly had truly wanted to veto this, we'll have seen the body language says it all. The moment the president said no, the National Assembly closed shop and went on recess. So, it's rather unfortunate that we are in the position that we are now. So I think the best is to wait on the president and also hope that he gets to sign that into law.
You can't win the legal battle, but the crisis will continue to fester. And that is why it is important that in trying to resolve this, you consider political, you explore political options. And these political options are varied. People have called for restructure the country. People have called for political inclusion and accommodation. People have called for equity. People have called for inclusion generally. Let us feel that we are part of this union. And so measures have to be taken. Political steps have to be taken, in addressing all of these issues. Like some will say, you can win the war, but will you win the peace? So winning the war is different from winning the peace. Yes, you can roll out military might, to win the war, but will you win the peace at the end of the day? And for me, I think the most important thing at this point in the country is to begin to reintegrate, begin to reconcile, begin to rebuild broken national bonds and broken national trust, and begin to bring everybody into the fold of the Nigerian state, and let everybody begin to feel that yes, indeed, we are part of this political union called Nigeria.
The CSOs in a document asked the National Assembly to ensure due diligence is carried out before the bill is presented to the President for assent.
North to South Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.